Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. You know when they say never meet your heroes because they will only disappoint you? Well, after 750 interviews, where I've interviewed everyone from Guy Kawasaki, William Shatner, Wendy Williams, Microsoft, Sony, IBM, Adobe, SAP, and so many more, I can safely say that every single person I've spoke to has been incredibly welcoming and free from any egos at all. But, yes, you did sense a big but coming, didn't you? I received a direct message from one of the biggest names in the blogging world the other day on Instagram. Notification spam and keeping all those little numbers from their apps on your phone is something that messes with my OCD. And keeping up with them all can be quite frustrating and just removing all them notifications from the apps. But when you get a big name direct messaging you and asking for your help, I must admit, I felt a little bit starstruck. So I sat down and carefully wrote a reply, sharing my story and how I would be happy to help. The following day, I received another message, completely bypassing my previous reply. And then it dawned on me. It was clearly an automated message, designed to look like it was a personal message. Essentially, it seemed that the direct message from a verified Instagram account was actually just automated software. And this got me thinking how this is not the way to use technology. I mean, if you're sending a direct message and sending a notification to somebody's account, you should want to connect and want that authenticity. And equally, if you go on LinkedIn and compose a message there, if you need the LinkedIn algorithm to provide you with the reply or a conversation starter, you're in big trouble, aren't you? But enough of how businesses or influencers or individuals shouldn't use AI and shouldn't use other technologies in this manner. I wanted to explore the real exciting game changer stuff today and how it has a huge potential for the future. So today I wanted to take a look at artificial intelligence and SAP Jam. So SAP Jam is a cloud-based enterprise social networking suite and collaboration app that actually enables users to connect with employees, their partners and customers and be utilised to protect company data by collaborating over a secure network. Upon reading more and more about SAP Jam, I invited Stephen Hamrick, and he's the Vice President of Product Management at SAP, onto this Daily Tech podcast so we can discuss how artificial intelligence, machine learning and natural language processing can impact employee productivity and efficiency right across the workplace, from everything from scheduling meetings to setting deadline reminders, and how all that is set to change significantly over the next 5 years. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California so we can speak with Stephen Hamrick, where we're going to be talking all about this and how AI in the workplace is currently falling short, and most importantly, where it will soon be heading with key advancements being made. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Certainly. My name is Steve Hamrick, and I am the Global Head of Product Management and Product Design for Enterprise Collaboration Products at SAP. And my background's kind of interesting. I've been in the enterprise software business for 20 years, or actually over 20 years now. And part of that has been on the implementation side of the fence. So I've worked in IT departments, actually rolling out enterprise software, rolling out IT systems, and then I switched gears and focused on product management in the last half of my career. So my team at SAP really, they focus on working with customers to understand where can we bring enterprise collaboration capabilities and mingle them with business processes, and then we deliver that into engineering, those requirements and design into engineering, and they become software products, and there's two of them at SAP. One is called SAP Jam Collaboration, and the other one is called SAP Jam Communities.
I'm glad you brought that up there, because my understanding is that SAP Jam actually enables employees to collaborate and share documents and ideas around a particular topic or goal, instead of having to go through so many emails and other avenues that are harder to manage and track. But can you help listeners who are just hearing about it for the first time understand what kind of problems it solves for businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they think about collaboration, they think about it in a very generic sense, which, is like, how do I send emails or communicate or connect with my colleagues and my coworkers or share documents and that sort of thing. And certainly those are fundamentally important things that everybody has to do day in, day out. But where SAP has focused on collaboration, where we saw a distinct opportunity for delivering something above and beyond for our customers, was thinking about where were there places inside of business processes that really could benefit from having collaborative capabilities. And if you think about it, SAP's heritage is over 40 years of business process expertise. So it makes sense that this is the kind of solution you'd expect from SAP. And those documents, those content, those pieces of information could exist and live anywhere, including in Jam, but they could also exist in other repositories and other solutions. So we like to think of ourselves as a orchestration layer that helps to connect people, content, data, and process together in context of a specific business process. So let me give you a couple examples. Let's say I'm in customer support and I've got a service ticket and I'm trying to connect with my colleagues. I need to look for knowledge base articles. I need to look for FAQs, documents, and that sort of thing to help quickly solve that service ticket, and maybe even create a quick private workspace with my colleagues to swarm on that service ticket to actually get that ticket solved faster. It's not necessarily a direct point-to-point business process. It's one that involves maybe connecting with a lot of unstructured content and people. And I could say the same thing about sales and marketing. Marketing, for example, if I'm planning a event and I want to actually have a workspace to actually bring together my colleagues, the project plan, the information about the event, and so on, and also then share that out with the rest of my organization. That needs to be connected to the system I'm using to actually plan the event, which would be powered by SAP, as well as being able to allow me to connect to all of the document content resources and distribute that to my organization as I need.
So, as this is a tech show, a few things I've got to ask you, Harry. How do you think big tech trends such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing, how do you think these trends are going to impact employee productivity and efficiency right across the workplace over the next 5 years? Because we are in the infancy at the moment, and a lot of capabilities are being exaggerated in some circles. But over the next 5 years, and looking at that bigger picture, what do you see there?
Well, this is a space that I am absolutely excited about in a lot of respects, because when it comes to the possibility of transforming the way people work, I think AI, machine learning, and natural language processing have significant potential. And I want to underscore that word potential, because I think a lot of it hasn't been met yet for individual employees as much as it has been for organizations as a whole. So for individual employees, I think there's a couple of key areas that we see over and over again, and I've heard this from many business leaders across all spectrum of company sizes and industries. The first one is that you feel it. The pace of business and the pace of the information flow in the world today is at a peak that it's never been at before. And it's seeming to go even faster every month that we tick by. The amount of information that you can either consume or be aware of is growing. And for individuals and organizations, even 10 years ago, I heard people saying, I'm overwhelmed with my email. And that was when you just had to worry about email. Now you're overwhelmed with my email, my text messages, my social media posts, my documents, notifications, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. It's just gotten much bigger. And one thing that I think AI, machine learning, natural language processing have a significant potential to do for individuals in the organization is to help them connect with that needle in a haystack. Where is the right information that I need to know about right this instant? And it may not be stuff that I'm actively looking for. It may be stuff that I have access to. I should be aware of it, but I'm just not aware of it. Another thing that we hear a lot, and stuff that's happened over a long period of time has never really been solved, is this interruption problem. Again, you go back to the fact that all of these different information sources are vying for your attention. They're spamming you with notifications every day. And in fact, I installed a news app, and I won't name the network, but I installed a news app on my phone yesterday, and I opened it up for the first time, and they said, oh, we'll only send you notifications of really important breaking news. And I said, well, I like to be updated, so I'm going to say yes to that. And of course, I'm getting like 2 or 3 a day, and I'm getting super frustrated, so I'm going to probably disable their notifications. But point being that this kind of notification spamming happens even in the work context as well. And there's people that get spammed, whether it's updates and alerts and notifications over email or text alerts and so on. And I think the potential for AI, machine learning, and natural language processing is to be able to suss out when are there times that are appropriate, whether it's the point in time that you're working to defer those notifications to a time where maybe it's more adequate and appropriate for you to get them, or it's less disruptive to what you're doing right now, or these things can be completely suppressed and we don't even have to tell you about them, right? You can just ignore them. And that's another really big area. And the last bucket, and I'm sure this is not the end of it, but the last bucket that comes to mind right away is that, AI and machine learning, natural language processing are all really great at making future predictions, but in a lot of respects, they can also be used to look back on what happened as a result of actions. And I think if you read articles, there's all kinds of articles about the differences in generational workforce preferences. And you hear stories about how millennials in particular are very much about being able to understand the impact of the work they're doing. I personally think that that's universal. I think people across the spectrum of generations want to understand, when I'm working on something in my daily life, how is that impacting what the company's bottom line is? Well, how does that connect to the bigger goal? Is there meaning in the work that I'm doing? I'm lucky. I'm passionate about what I do. I've been passionate. I knew from a very young age that I wanted to do work in software. I know not everybody feels that way. And I think that anything that we can do to help people connect to a bigger purpose in the work they do, considering how much time people spend at work, is significantly beneficial, not only because ultimately it makes businesses more efficient, but because it also makes work a lot more enjoyable in the end.
So why do you think that AI in the workplace is falling short at the moment? Is it just because we're in the early days and we're just seeing the potential, like you said then?
So this is the interesting thing. I think AI is falling short from an expectations perspective for employees, but and part of that comes from the fact that a lot of the early applications of AI and machine learning have been really in back office functions and in places that employees don't always see what that benefit is to them personally. So, for example, companies have been doing data mining and using AI and predictive analytics to make very accurate predictions about their customer base for years now. And you've probably heard the almost an urban legend story about a certain retailer getting in trouble with a customer who was receiving adverts for baby diapers for his teenage daughter. And lo and behold, the predictive algorithm had figured out that his teenage daughter was actually pregnant from the purchases she made. And that kind of back office AI, although it's almost magical in what it can do, doesn't really translate into what employees feel on a day out, day basis. And on top of that, you've got people's imagination about what AI could be and what it could do has been influenced over the last 30, 40 years from media and television. I'm sure many of us grew up watching Star Trek and other shows where you could just have a conversation with a computer and it had a kind of generalized AI, right? So it wasn't just a specific AI to predict a certain kind of outcome, but it was one that could have an ongoing conversation. It felt very human in nature. And I think that there's been tantalizing progress on the consumer side where you've got a personal digital assistant in your pocket now. Some people find that amazing and some people find that it falls short because their expectations are still so high. They're thinking, oh, I should be able to have a more thorough conversation with this AI, with this thing. And in reality, if you think about what most people do with their personal home digital assistants, it's mostly things like turn on the lights, turn off the lights, play a playlist from my favorite music station. It's not very sophisticated. And so I think there's an expectations gap for sure, number one. Number two, the problems of information overload and the problems of notification overload. In a lot of respects, there hasn't been a magic solution that works from a budget and buyer perspective either, right? A lot of these solutions, at the end of the day, somebody has to go to bat and say, I'm ready to say that this is a viable solution that will benefit our employees and that I'm willing to shell out the money for it and I'm going to take the budget for it. And a lot of companies, that usually falls on IT as an organization to decide, yeah, we're going to feel confident that this solution is definitely going to benefit all of our employees. And so that leaves a really high bar because they're going to have to decide, does this work from a general practices perspective for all of the different departments and teams that are involved? And can I justify the budget I'm about to spend on this solution? Or is it still very junior in nature and maybe only specialized to certain functions, and it's not going to meet the expectations. So I'm not willing to spend the money on it either.
So if we do zoom out from all the hype that surrounds artificial intelligence, I think it's easy to see the bigger picture, and it's not about where we are now, but what really is really exciting is where we're heading. So what key advancements do you think businesses need to actually be looking out for, and what does that future look like?
I think one of the things that's really key is kind of directly tied to what I was mentioning earlier, and being able to justify the investment costs in the kinds of technologies. A lot of what's available today is still kind of in a nuts and bolts state where it's fantastic technology, but you're still having to, as an IT organization, figure out how to apply that to a specific problem area for your particular industry or particular company. And I think as those technology pieces become road tested and go through, become solutions for particular industries and for particular types of companies, that it will be much easier for buyers to make that jump and that leap from a purchasing perspective to be able to justify the spend that they would do in AI, right? Like I said, if you step back and say, well, all I can really offer you is general productivity, it's a much harder sell because that number becomes really fuzzy as far as an ROI, right? It's hard to say that for sure that just because your employees are 50% more productive, that not necessarily that will lead to the right impacts that you need in the bottom line. You need something maybe a step deeper than that, which is, here's how this will affect your sales team, right? Here's how this will affect your service team. Here's how this will affect your finance team in terms of their ability to do these kinds of things in your day in, day out life.
So as someone that works with many businesses from all over the world each day, I mean, are leaders that you speak with, are they actually ready to embrace change and start adopting emerging technologies to secure an early advantage? Is that something that you're seeing?
Yes, unequivocally, yes. If they are convinced that it will provide them that early advantage, they are willing to put the money resources into it. And I think that's where, going back to some of the earlier examples I mentioned, some of the investments have been so far. It's not been so much on the personal productivity level. It's been a lot on the data mining for things like marketing purposes or being able to predict where the best markets are, those sorts of things that are really not as necessarily as broadly visible to everyone in the company. But emphatically, yes, I think business leaders are very keenly and acutely aware that being able to leverage AI and machine learning technologies in their industry, in their particular business, is going to give them an advantage. And if they can prove it, they will definitely put the investment into it.
And one of the things that really fascinates me is the almost polarization between our work life and our home life. For example, at home, we're reading a LinkedIn article, a movie on Netflix, an Amazon purchase, a Spotify playlist, or even just grabbing an Uber. It's increasingly feeling like artificial intelligence and machine learning and algorithms are already playing a huge part in our everyday life. But when you go into the office, it can sometimes feel like stepping back in time 10 years. I mean, has that message reached the boardrooms, in your opinion?
It has, and it's not a new problem either. I've heard this for, like I said, I've been in this space for 20 years, and even in the early 2000s, we were, when you were just dealing with a few hundred or maybe a few thousand documents and a few thousand pieces of content for employees to sift through on a day-to-day basis, companies were definitely feeling it. They still haven't had that aha moment from here's how I can justify spending it because this solution will help me in this way for this particular use case. So I think it's definitely reached boardrooms. But like I said, it's when you present the solution back to them and say, well, here's this thing that maybe will produce a 50% increase in this very fuzzy idea of productivity, it's harder for them to feel compelled to buy into it. In a lot of cases, they've been burned as well. They may have made investments. I've heard a lot of customers say, we bought into this technology. We thought it was going to be fantastic and work, and it just stacked onto the problem instead of actually helping it.
So this message has reached the boardroom then, and we've got all these barriers and hurdles in the way. How do we actually, or how do businesses overcome these hurdles and obtain that buy-in, which will enable them to move on to the next stage and leverage this technology?
So I think that's a great question. I think one of the things first for employers to get over and make sure that they identify and address properly is there may be industry-specific requirements or industry or location-specific requirements, geography-specific requirements from a legal perspective. One of the things that AI can do inadvertently, especially when it's you're asking it to make predictions and make connections to content, is it can actually inadvertently surface patterns that you don't want it to. I mean, going back to that story I was telling you earlier about the retailer who got a little bit in hot water for sending adverts to somebody who didn't know they were pregnant. That kind of thing actually can happen even within organizations, and it has happened. There are examples of early versions of clever machine learning and AI technology surfacing stuff that is not really appropriate for employees to know about, and that could include things like M&A, or it could include inadvertently capturing personal or information about employees that you don't really want to capture. I've had customers even as far back as the early 2010s that had run experiments where they used the email traffic within their organization to try to identify patterns. And once they showed that information to the board was terrified by what it actually was showing them. And they said, this is just not something that we feel comfortable allowing to continue. So I think the one hurdle in getting over this is to make sure that you bring it back to more of a specific problem space, and then have those requirements in mind still, but look at it from I know that in this particular line of business, we're struggling, right? I know that my company is not, resolving invoices as fast as they need to, or I know my company is not resolving service tickets as quickly as they need to, or I know that we're not capitalizing on sales momentum the way we need to. Those kinds of more specific problems allow you to then kind of target in on a specific application or use of AI, and then allow you to keep in check all those other things I mentioned around data privacy, making sure that you're collecting the right kind of information to learn from. By the way, one thing I think people sometimes forget, AI is only as smart as the stuff you can teach it, and that stuff is the data you collect, and that data has to be clean in a way that you're not collecting information or capturing things either intentionally or inadvertently that you don't want to have it learn from or have it make predictions from. So I think those are the key aspects.
So I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball now, but a lot of it's going to be based on your experiences. And looking forward to the future, what are the biggest challenges and equally opportunities ahead for both SAP Jam and also your customers?
So this is a great question. I think the biggest challenge that some of our customers have right now is where do I start? How do I even identify where I have those opportunities to be tackled from a productivity perspective, or from those business challenges I mentioned earlier, right? How do I even know that I have trouble from a finance invoices perspective to really tackle those areas? And then beyond that, it's gaining the adoption, because sometimes people look at collaboration tools in particular, and they want to pick their own, or they don't feel comfortable with the choice that the company made. For whatever reason, collaboration software in particular tends to evoke very emotional responses. I think a lot of it has to do with, ultimately, that's the way people work. But they have to find a way to build that support and adoption. That support and adoption is definitely better when you know the problem space you're solving for. And it's been something that we've focused on from the beginning when we've developed the SAP Jam technologies. We've said, let's make sure that we're not just doing things from a generic collaboration perspective. Yes, generic collaboration is important, but it still has to facilitate some sort of business process in the end. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges, but also biggest opportunities, because there are many, many more processes that we haven't even really turned over yet in terms of making improvements by bringing collaboration into those processes.
And I think all the challenges and the opportunities that we've talked about today are going to resonate with so many people listening all over the world. And if there is people left with more questions, what's the best way of reaching out to SAP Jam or indeed a member of your team and just finding out a little bit more information about what you do?
You can find us on the web at sap.com/jam. And you can also tweet me at socialhamrick, that's HAMRICK, at Twitter.
There's so much great technology out there, and I love the point that you highlighted a few moments ago. It doesn't matter how sophisticated the technology is or the size of the project. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. So getting your data right is so important, isn't it? But more than anything, just a big thank you for coming on the show and talking with me today. Thanks.
No, thank you. It was fantastic.
I cannot thank Stephen enough for coming on the show today, as this tech podcast is not about fueling the hype of artificial intelligence or indeed any technology. It's real stories of how businesses are moving forward and all those obstacles that are preventing progress or buy-in from their board. And there were so many great points. Yes, many businesses have been burnt by many bad projects, which were the result of buying into the latest shiny tech without knowing what problems they wanted to solve. I also love Stephen's wake-up call there, like I said in the outro, that even sophisticated artificial intelligence cannot save you from bad data. Garbage in, garbage out is still a big problem. And after our conversation, this got me thinking, is this because we kind of expect technology just to solve our problems with very little human input? Because in our personal life, we enjoy Netflix, Spotify, Amazon and Uber, but we have no interest or appreciation for the complex technology that makes it all work seamlessly. But what are your thoughts about the future of business, the workplace, AI, SAP Jam, and any topic we discussed today? In fact, anything at all. As always, you can email me techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and you can also find me on Instagram at Neil C. Hughes too. Now, I began this show by sharing the story of an online influencer out there that was using technology probably not to its best advantages, and actually coming across as unauthentic, and by sacrificing authenticity in the progress. Have you had any similar experiences with anybody out there? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and how those interactions made you feel. But that's it for today's episode. So a big thank you for Stephen for coming on the show and joining me today from SAP, and also an even bigger thank you to each and every one of you that tune into this daily podcast and allow me to be the soundtrack to your commute or whatever it is that you're doing when you listen to this show. I'll return tomorrow with another great guest, but until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.